Will the vaccine rollout do what common sense so far has failed to do? Will the madness and mismanagement of state premiers, Liberal and Labor, suddenly end now that the much-awaited vaccine rollout is underway? I certainly hope so, but I have to say all available evidence says we can't take it for granted. We saw the first vaccinations yesterday with the Prime Minister, and let me start off by saying I couldn't be happier that vulnerable Australians are getting the vaccine. Elderly people, especially in aged care facilities and those who work with them, and people who suffer respiratory diseases, heart disease, immune deficiency diseases, or are recovering from cancer. All these people can't get the vaccine soon enough because contracting coronavirus presents a very deadly threat to them. Their chances of dying from it can be as high as 10%. I can't wait for my own parents to get their doses, for instance. We all understand this. And today we saw more premiers and frontline workers vaccinated. Again, it's only fair that people at the coalface get vaccinated. Even if they're younger and healthier, their chances of contracting it are higher. They are putting themselves in harm's way. And for peace of mind, if nothing else, they need the chance to get that protection. But what about the rest of us? Why are people so eager to get vaccinated now? For healthy adults who are not elderly, the chances of getting even moderately ill are low and the chances of dying are negligible. We all understand the need to quell the pandemic and make sure we're not overwhelmed with the virus, but the experts tell us that they don't know whether the vaccine stops transmission of the disease. It just prevents people getting severely ill and dying. But that's already a remote possibility for most of us. Anyway, if there is a chance it can stop transmission and create that herd immunity, fair enough. We ought to all get on board. But I'm just saying, as in with everything when it comes to do with this virus, calm down. Healthy adults, and certainly children who won't even be getting the vaccine, have little to fear. Make sure all the vulnerable are vaccinated and protected, then we can all breathe a sigh of relief. The point is this. Once all the vulnerable are vaccinated, we should be able to get back to normal. Certainly end local lockdowns and state border closures, most of which never should have happened in the first place. That's within weeks if we can get all this behind us. With our vulnerable protected with a vaccine, we ought to return to life as normal. A coronavirus infection ought to be an inconvenience then, rather than cause for massive alarm. We should be able to open our international borders too, certainly to anyone who's been vaccinated, but perhaps more broadly, sooner. But here's the worry. What I'm saying is only logical. It just makes sense. What we actually see, as we usually do, is more panic and overreaction. Daniel Andrews has already said he won't rule out more lockdowns until more than 90% of the population is vaccinated and we've got herd immunity. Think how absurd that is. On his logic, we can't rule out lockdowns until they start vaccinating children. That might never happen. This is where we've ended up. Instead of learning more and becoming more pragmatic and more rational in our pandemic approach, there are indications that all the premiers, with the laudable exception of Gladys Berejiklian, will continue to panic, continue to see every infection of this disease as a blow to their political standing. Imagine if they behave this way with measles or tuberculosis or other diseases. We've seen how far these people have been prepared to go, locking down 2 million people in South Australia for a tiny, isolated cluster, 2 million people in Western Australia for a single case, 2 million people in Brisbane for a single case, 6.5 million people in Victoria for no cases that weren't already in isolation. Borders closed, jobs destroyed, families separated, funerals missed and weddings cancelled. There's no justification for doing any of this, even if you think it was justified sometime in the past in some instances. Once we have all the vulnerable people in this country vaccinated, and that should just be weeks away, there's no excuse for ever going down this path again. We have to push our political leaders to make sensible decisions about evaluating risks and delivering proportionate responses, about being competent instead of panicked. They need to proclaim that once the vaccine is protecting the vulnerable, it's time to live properly with the virus. But don't hold your breath.